If you are completely baffled as to where to start when you open Lightroom, have no fear. We'll give you some quick beginner tips for better photo editing in this video. If you use other photo editing software, the basics will still translate over, so you should be good there.
It applies to everyone.
If you really don't know anything about Lightroom, we have a comprehensive video covering all of the panels in Lightroom in under 29 minutes, which I will link below. Now, let's head into the Develop module and get started. And thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. This might sound basic, but people get this wrong all the time. First, just ensure your exposure is roughly where you want it. In the histogram, you can click on these triangles to show clipping. If areas are too dark, a blue overlay will appear. If areas are too bright, a red overlay will appear. It's normal to have some blown out areas like this, but you can always turn down the highlights to retain more details and fix some of that clipping. Once your exposure is set, it's crucial to ensure your white balance is correct. Since lighting affects how colors are perceived, white balance aims to ensure the whites in your image appear as true white or just look the way they did in real life. By balancing the whites for your scene, you ensure all the colors look the way you want. You can try cycling through white balance presets here in Lightroom. Oftentimes auto will do a pretty good job, but you can also use the eyedropper to click on an area in your image you want to appear white. Avoid clicking on really blown out areas and choose something more in the mid-range. Instead of clicking on the sky where there isn't much information to pull from, I'll click on something white and less bright. Personally, I usually just adjust the temperature and tint manually and go off what looks right for me, but if you haven't yet developed your eye for white balance yet, try the presets, auto, or the eyedropper. Before we move on, another tool you may find useful is the auto settings button. This has improved a lot over the years. Just click auto right above exposure, and Lightroom will do its best to create contrast in the image while maintaining details. Now let's check out the tone curve. This can be really daunting if you've never used it before, which is why we made an entire video dedicated to this panel, but it's mainly used to adjust the tonal contrast of your image. Lightroom has two basic presets for adding contrast, which you can try out. Medium contrast creates subtle adjustments to the curve, adding some contrast in the shadows. Strong contrast creates more obvious adjustments, creating more of an S curve that you may have heard about before. This creates a more apparent difference in the shadows and highlights of the image. I usually create a few points in the bottom left to bring some richness into the shadows, then a point in the middle just to keep things from getting too crazy. If you really want a contrasty image, you can add points in the top right of the curve to make a pop. If you prefer a more muted look, you can bring these points down. And here's a tip if you aren't familiar with tonal ranges of an image. Click on the target adjustment circle, which is this icon right here. Now hover over areas of your image and watch the tone curve while you do it. So if you want to lift the shadows so you can bring the detail out here, you can click and drag up and watch how the tone curve automatically places and moves a point for you. Pretty cool. Pretty. The hue, saturation, and luminance panel may look daunting with all its sliders, but it's pretty powerful. All the colors in your image are divided into these 8 hue ranges. The hue section will allow you to shift colors to appear more like its adjacent hue on the color wheel. So you can shift the red slider to the right to make reds appear more orange, or to the left to look more magenta. Here I could shift the hue of the water to appear more blue, or more green. Here's another example. Maybe we want the foliage to look more autumnal, so we could shift the greens toward yellow. And then here's something else you could experiment with. You could shift the yellow hues towards green, and this negates some of the hue differences between all the foliage and condenses the colors to a more singular hue. Now personally, I wouldn't want to do that because I love how it looked in reality, but you may find situations where you do want to utilize this. A lot of people, even more established photographers, struggle with editing concert photos because the lighting situations can be anything but ideal. Let's look at this photo of Taking Back Sunday. We can implement a few sliders to create a more interesting edit. First, I'm going to warm the white balance as much as possible because it is so overwhelmingly blue. Now in the hue section, I'll drag the blue slider to the left toward aqua. Then I'll drag the purple slider toward magenta. This emphasizes the slight hue difference we had in the beginning by shifting the hues farther away from each other on the color wheel. The blues are now more green and the purples are now more magenta. So with just a few clicks, we took the photo from this to this. Because photo editing has become so powerful, it's incredibly easy to go overboard when editing. When I first used Lightroom, I went a bit crazy with the clarity adjustment, oversaturated my photos, and overall just made things look worse. we always recommend avoiding extremes with editing. If a photo is shot properly, you should be able to get a terrific edit without moving any slider more than 65% in either direction. So just as a rule of thumb, if you find yourself cranking sliders all the way to 100, maybe take a step away from the computer, come back with fresh eyes, and make sure you're still happy with the edit. If you've watched our videos before, you probably know that we are pretty big fans of Squarespace. We have been customers of theirs for years, long before this YouTube channel even existed, and still have our 3 Squarespace websites going strong. Usually we do something off the walls for our ad spots, like fake our elopement to trick my mom, spoof old MTV reality shows, or do our best Peloton commercial parody. But I wanted to let you know about some new things cooking over at Squarespace. If you're a photographer looking to diversify your revenue streams, check out their new member areas. This allows you to sell access to gated content like video classes, digital downloads, or newsletters. Frickin' sweet. You can also showcase your photography with Squarespace's professional portfolio designs. Customize the layout, look, and feel to make it your own. Also, you can schedule and book appointments straight from your website. You need to lock in client meetings? Well, they can easily see your availability and reschedule if needed, making your life a heck of a lot easier. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain when you go to squarespace.com/mangostreet, or just click the link in the description. We hope these tips help you feel more comfortable when editing photos. If you are looking for a leg up, check out our preset collections. We make them as versatile and one-click as possible, and they are the same presets that we use every single day, like our film emulation collection. That is cutting me off right now. Bye.